Welcome everyone to our So You're a Leader, How to Give Feedback and Have Difficult Conversations session. So my name is Olivia LeWarn. I'm with the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, and I have just a few brief housekeeping tips before we start out. So this session is being recorded and it will be shared on the CDRW website sometime the week of the 28th. All of the attendees are automatically muted by the host at the start of the session. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat box. And if you're having any technical issues, please directly message me. Again, my name is Olivia LeWarn, and I will do my best to help you out. If you're interested in seeing the rest of the forum schedule, you can visit our Sketch link, and that is also where you can share your thoughts about how amazing this session was after the session has ended. And if we will be using virtual slides for this presentation that are interactive. So I've included the link in the chat to the virtual slide deck, but when the time comes, please have those up so you can share your thoughts in the interactive slides. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mariah and Brenna.
Thanks, Olivia. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenna Goggin. I am the Mid-Atlantic Leadership Development Manager for River Network.
And hey, everybody, I'm Mariah Davis. I am the Policy and Campaigns Manager for the Choose Clean Water Coalition. We are right next door and work in the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
Great. Next slide, Olivia. So today, Mariah and I are going to talk to you about developing a feedback culture within your organization and how to have what we've now termed courageous conversations within your team. The title of the presentation is So You Are a Leader, and we just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that everyone is a leader, regardless of your title. And regardless of where you might be in the hierarchy of your organization. In some way, shape, or form, you are a leader, and so this presentation works no matter what position you may be in. In the email that you received from Amy Schofield this morning, you should have received links or a reminder to look at the links associated with the videos. We just don't have enough time to have you watch the videos together. And there should have been community agreements embedded in that as well, but we're going to go over them really briefly. So we'll spend just a few seconds talking about the community agreements, as we will be dealing with some delicate and sometimes triggering information here today. So we want to make sure that, most importantly, we keep things confidential. We'll go over how to give and receive feedback and what is radical candor. We'll have a brief breakout exercise where you'll talk about your own personal experiences or something that you've witnessed. And then Mariah will do a deep dive into courageous conversations, and we'll have some role playing, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. So next slide. As I mentioned, we have some community agreements. So you have them on your screen, and hopefully you had a chance to review them ahead of time. If you could just really quickly, using the reactions on the Zoom platform, just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you have read and that you are comfortable with these community agreements. I'll wait for you to do that. And as you, thanks Mariah, as you're giving me the thumbs up, if there are thanks, Audrey. If there are other community agreements that you feel need to be added, please put those in the chat box. And I'll just give you a couple of seconds here. Thanks for those that are using the chat box to tell me thumbs up. And thanks for those that are giving me a thumbs up. I'm not seeing any additions, but certainly feel free to add those even as part of your breakout rooms if we don't get a chance to add them today. So next slide. We always like starting, oh, there should be one before that, Olivia. We always like starting presentations. Oh, it for whatever reason doesn't like that slide. There we go. With a grounding exercise. Mariah put this together and I just find it absolutely amazing. So how are you feeling today? And using the numbers that are associated with each picture, feel free to type into the chat box. How are you feeling right now? And share with us. And it's fine. This is a very safe space to share realistically how you're doing. You could be number 1, happy. Number 2 is it's hump day. 3 is grumpy cat. 4 is I don't know how I'm feeling, but can we just stop this? 5 is sleepy. 6 is I'm ready for a drink. 7 is like I'm really excited to be here. And 8 is I've already passed out the drinks and I'm done for the day. I'm signing off. Peace out. Loving the responses. I wish that we were late enough in the day to justify the wine glass coming out with today's presentation for sure. But overall, it looks, and this is really nice to see, it looks like we're getting some pretty good responses. Definitely some 4s in there, which I think Mariah and I are sharing with you as we are presenting this afternoon. We kind of feel like, thanks. Thanks, Olivia. Next slide. So we're starting today's presentation with giving feedback. Like I said, regardless of the position that you hold within your organization, in order to develop your leadership skills and to become what I hope you would all want to be an authentic leader, is to be willing to listen to and provide feedback, especially the feedback that your staff are likely not going to want to hear, right? This is a difficult, sometimes awkward, can be an emotional process. However, to avoid these conversations, because you don't want to be awkward and you don't want to be emotional, means that you risk losing your credibility with your staff. Being a leader with integrity means you choose courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy. So the key to creating a feedback culture within your staff, organization, or your team is to build trust and a relationship first. You build trust by being genuine, by being interested in helping your staff or your team grow and succeed, by asking questions and being authentic and wanting to know the response to that, and encouraging them to provide feedback to you. And responding positively when they do so. And then showing trust, not just through words, but through action. When you are giving feedback, make sure that your feedback is focused on the behavior, not personalities. Recommending a change in action is so much easier than recommending a change in attitude. The more specific you can be, the more likely it is that people can hear you. And when you give feedback on behavior, you're staying away from their character, which makes it a little less personal for them. Keep in mind that feedback is not the same thing as praise. Saying, great job today, is not providing feedback. That's praise, and while that's gonna make your team or your coworkers feel really good in the short term, it's not really telling them anything about what was great. It doesn't help them to grow. Instead, think about what they did specifically that was great. Were they energetic and thoughtful in their presentation? Did they keep their cool during what could have been a difficult interaction and use the right chain of command when they let their supervisors know about that interaction? When giving feedback, think about starting the conversation by asking questions. Asking questions actually would probably result in you learning more about the situation and yourself than you originally thought. These questions can be, what are you feeling the least confident about? How can we address those areas so that you're ready for the next opportunity? Also, don't meet feedback with negative repercussions. If your staff is brave enough and courageous enough to give you feedback, that should not show up on their staff evaluation. That should not be something that you bring out when you have a disagreement moving forward. When giving feedback, consider your surroundings and how you present your nonverbal language. If you're getting ready to give feedback and your arms are crossed and you push yourself back, if you're not meeting someone's eyes, then the feedback is going to be very difficult for that person to hear. Remember that feedback should always be given in person, and always in a one-on-one setting, not a group setting, and definitely not through email. Next slide, Olivia. So we wanted to do a spectrogram to see how confident you are in providing feedback. So using the links that Olivia shared with you, you should be able to access the slide. And we'd love to know, on a scale of not confident at all to very confident, how confident are you in providing feedback? And just say, let's just put this in the context of if everything is relatively calm and easygoing in the situation, because I know some people said it depends on the setting. Let's just talk as much as we can in general terms. So I'm seeing middle ground. Oh, we got a couple of confident people. That's fabulous. Give it a few more seconds. Make sure we should have 21 little clouds on the line. For those that are coming in with a little less than middle ground on the confidence scale, I hope after this presentation, you will feel a little bit more confident. We don't have time to do a post-presentation spectrogram, but keep in mind what you indicated today and check in with yourself in a couple of months to see if you've practiced what we went over today and if your scale has changed. All right, so generally we're middle ground. Some are a little less confident, some a little bit more confident. Olivia, let's see how people feel about receiving feedback. Something that's likely even more difficult, at least for me, I have found, than providing feedback is receiving feedback. If you tend to be a sensitive person, which I most certainly am, receiving feedback can be much more daunting than providing feedback. Although it looks like we have more folks are more confident in receiving the feedback than, and keep in mind, when we're talking about the feedback, this is the constructive, hey, I'm here trying to help you type of feedback, not the blame, getting personal level of feedback. So it definitely seems as if folks are the opposite of yours truly, in that they are much more confident in receiving feedback than they are in giving feedback. Very interesting results. And keep in mind your answers to these questions too as we go into our breakout rooms later. Thanks, Olivia. Next slide. So one of the resources that River Network has used to build a feedback culture within the organization is a book by Kim Scott titled Radical Candor. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to review the video ahead of time. But if you didn't, I'm going to do a very brief overview anyway. What Kim Scott says is that the best way, the best feedback that you can give is a radically candid feedback. Radically candid feedback means that you are challenging the person directly, basically being willing to piss them off, while showing that you care personally. You honestly care about improving them or improving some skill set and seeing them grow. There are 3 other ways that you can provide feedback, none of which are recommended. They are obnoxious aggression, brushing off your honesty. This is the one that she calls a cuss word quadrant, just in case anyone has little ones at home. I don't want to say it out loud, but you can probably guess what quadrant that is. Ruinous empathy. The work was terrible, but you gave someone false praise, and then you turned around and fired them. So they had no idea what went wrong because all they had heard from you was, great job, you're doing great, even though the work really did stink and you were building a case to fire them all along. Manipulative insincerity. You don't believe what you're saying, and it's very obvious that you don't believe what you're saying, especially if you're apologizing. It's kind of a, I'm sorry you feel that way, like an apology, not apology. Making friends by making promises that you have no intention of keeping. So Kim Scott would like us to do feedback in a radically candid way. And you do that by being very clear, both in your mind and to whoever you're speaking with, that you're doing this to help. And thinking about and even writing out how the feedback that you're giving them is meant to help them. So being as specific as possible, again, to the behavior or the skill sets as opposed to the personality. Stating right up front your intention to be helpful. A sentence that we find as we begin feedback is, I'm telling you something because if I were in your shoes, I'd want to know. That gives across the sense to whoever you're speaking with that you're coming at this as something that you have observed, and this is a way that you can improve a skill set. I think of this often as the XYZ with you're in a public place and someone that you know has their zipper down. Do you really want them to go walking around with their zipper down or a piece of toilet paper stuck to their shoe or that type of thing? No. And so in a professional setting, you wouldn't want your staff or your team to be embarrassed in that way either. So helping them grow and being clear about that is most important. Show, don't tell. So be specific on the behavior. This is awkward and it can be painful, but to give praise instead of honesty will only hurt the other person in the long run and may probably come back and hurt you, because who knows if they can trust what you're saying to them and whether or not you really do have their best intentions. And then the fifth one is be willing to connect people with someone that can help them and take yourself out of the equation. So as a leader, it might not be, even if you have the right skill set, the most appropriate thing to be the person to offer this help. Sometimes that just adds confusion, and it's better if you encourage them to get a mentor or connect them with somebody else in the organization that has the skill set that you're looking for them to build, so that they can spend time to one another. Next slide, Olivia. So receiving feedback, although most of you seem to be very confident receiving feedback, it's always great to have a refresher on how to go about receiving feedback in the most positive and helpful way. If you want to encourage a feedback culture within your team, allowing space for them to give you feedback in return is probably the most vital thing that you can do before you even give feedback. Especially if you are in a hierarchical leadership position, the fact that your staff might be brave enough to come to you and provide that feedback might be the first pivotal step to building that relationship and trust, and maybe something that you want to consider encouraging before you begin handing out the feedback yourself. One of the best ways to receive feedback is to ask questions. Responding with curiosity allows an opening for that person that's providing you with the feedback to elaborate and to feel a little bit more comfortable with talking with you. It also shows that you're interested in learning something about yourself that can be helpful to you and put the other person at ease. It also, quite frankly, gives you an opportunity to buy some time. As you're processing, you may feel the need to get emotional. You may need time to really hear what you're saying. So some good questions to buy yourself some time can include, can you tell me more about what you mean by that? Can you help me to understand what that means to you? Can you walk me through how this relates to XYZ? When you're receiving feedback, assume positive intent. Always. That changes the entire lens by which you view the conversation that you're having and the person providing that feedback. It also means that the person that's giving you the feedback is doing the very best that they can. which completely changes the dynamic in a feedback situation. It is perfectly acceptable that when you are receiving feedback that you ask for time to process the information. Just simply say, you know what, that's really great information, or thank you for that information, even if you can't bring yourself to say great information. Can I have some time to process that? You should encourage folks to take that time. If you're on the receiving end of the feedback, don't defend yourself, don't debate the items, don't debate what is being said. See if you can, as you're reflecting on the conversation, find something within what that person was saying that you can agree with. Because there's always some truth to what is being said, even if it's minuscule. If you are receiving this feedback and somebody fails to give you the specific information that we have encouraged you to give, so they make it personal, or they just say, you know what, you were really obnoxious today. Well, that tells you absolutely nothing and gives you no way of growing or building a response. It is not at that time that you go, well, what do you mean I'm being obnoxious? I need a specific example right now. That is very likely not to get you the response that you're looking for. So instead, say, I hear that you're saying I was obnoxious. Can you be more specific about that? Which can be really difficult when someone just called you obnoxious to try to maintain your calm and to ask that question back, but it does begin to diffuse what could be a difficult situation. Again, if someone is getting to be a little bit more personal, asking, so I hear what you're saying is XYZ, is that right? And do the whole, you're repeating back to them what you think that you're hearing them say. And then try to think of a specific example yourself. If they still can't provide one, see if you can come up with a time where you thought that you were being obnoxious. And see if that resonates with what they're saying, because they may have just used the wrong word when describing you. Next slide. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms and want you to, within 2 or 3 people, looks like we might be good with just doing 2. Describe an experience when you received feedback that was delivered in a helpful and caring way. How did that make you feel? And then on the flip side, describe when you received feedback that you did not find helpful, and how did that make you feel? And then for the giving feedback, have you ever been so nice that it ended up working against you? Or have you ever felt there was no way to avoid being mean in your feedback? So I know Olivia was typing those questions into the chat box. Thank you, Olivia. And she's going to go ahead and put you into breakout rooms. You're going to have 10 minutes to share your stories. Hopefully you have a chance to introduce yourselves, and then we'll come back and share out on things for those that feel comfortable.
I will be putting you all in your breakout rooms now, and I'll give you the last 2 questions in the chats for each of your breakout rooms.
Thanks, Olivia. Are already starting to put into the share out. Thank you. Hopefully you found the breakout rooms to be a little helpful, and maybe came to some realizations about receiving or giving feedback that you hadn't thought about previously. For those that didn't have the opportunity to type into the little post-it notes, feel free to share out anything that you might have learned without giving away personal information, of course. So it looks like, Mariah, did you want to read some of the things that we're seeing?
Yeah, so it looks like one of the groups, top left, said when people cannot come up with constructive, specific examples, it ends up feeling very personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brenna and I chit-chatted too that it's been unhelpful for me personally when I've received feedback, and there has been a lot of emotion attached as well. So I could definitely relate and could see that without those specific examples. Also, it's been helpful to assume positive intent and start
Yeah.
with the data, the behavior, and the situation. Those are all good. Some other groups, we found that starting with recognizing the good, then transitioning to helpful next steps was best. We think when conflict styles clash, emotional versus non-emotional, it can be hard to receive and provide feedback. We think trust between the
Yeah.
parties makes all the difference in terms of how feedback is received. Were you going to say something, Brenna?
Yeah, one of the things that we have learned through the Radical Candor and other resources that we've been using, when your conflict style, that emotional, non-emotional, is different. Writing down what it is that you want to say and practicing it role playing with somebody. So you'll see that Mariah and I have done some role playing, can be very beneficial. And starting the conversation with, I don't expect a response from the feedback that I'm about to receive. I want you to take the time that you need to really reflect on this, and feel free to come back with any questions, and let's schedule a conversation, a follow-up conversation for a day or two. That allows the other person that may otherwise be emotional to put their thoughts together and respond in a non-emotional way. It also keeps the one that might be emotional that's giving the feedback from getting emotional, because they've already written it out and role played the scenario. We got, oh, it disappeared. Recognizing the good, then transitioning to helpful. Great. The trust seems to be an overwhelming theme too. Great. Thanks, guys. At this, we're going to turn it over to Mariah to talk about courageous conversation.
Thank you, Brenna. And so courageous conversations, or having a difficult conversation, is what this piece of our presentation will talk about. And we shared a video ahead of time from Mel Robbins on how to give a difficult conversation. She shared some really great tips that I'll kind of give an overview about, but Brenna and I have also kind of assessed and came up with these best tips and practices for what we believe are going to best prepare you when having that difficult or that courageous conversation. So before I kind of walk through those, Mel Robbins in her video did share that 67%, this was a study by Harvard Business Review, 67% of managers are actually really uncomfortable having conversations with their peers and people that they're managing over, which is a huge number, 67%. And she said that any time that you have to have a difficult conversation, whether it's through work or personal, or you're at the grocery store or anything like that, it's something that naturally we just want to avoid and not do. So it's important to definitely practice and prepare and assess the situation, but these are some tips that Brenna and I thought could be really helpful as you're going into and preparing for those conversations. So assessing the situation, what are going to be the risks and also the rewards to having the conversation. Thinking a lot about what is the outcome that I want to see and what are the awards that I'm going to have has really helped to build my own personal confidence when going into these situations. So I love making lists and it's something I try to do each time, and, assessing the risk and the rewards. How is this person going to react? And sometimes you might be really surprised, in how the conversation goes in the end. Preparing, which, Brenna has mentioned and others have mentioned too, but writing out and thinking about what points are you going to say. And even, thinking about those goals and outcomes. That's also something that Mel Robbins refers to, creating goals for yourself and being very clear about the outcomes that you want to see. I've found it helpful just rehearsing a lot of the times and being really clear about what I'm saying, because I'm able to get my main points across. It might be an hour-long conversation and I might have 2 or 3 main points, but making sure that I say exactly what I want to say and writing it down and creating those goals for myself has always been really helpful in my own preparation. And then workshopping it, preparing it ahead of time, talking out loud, talking, with your friend, but actually role playing. I think it's very different too if you were to go to a colleague or a trusted friend and say, I'm having such a difficult time, with this person. Talking it out is different and venting than it is actually sitting down and sitting either with yourself or with somebody else and actually speaking it out loud and practicing it. But I've found it to be very powerful in the conversation that you're going to have. And then taking action, actually having the conversation and coming to it. I've always found that, the quicker you take action to have the difficult conversation, the quicker you're going to be able to move on, and overall, the better that you're going to feel too. So next slide, please. So 6 stages to having the difficult conversation. So definitely, getting started, which could be really hard to come to that conclusion. It's taken me weeks or days or a really long time. It's taken me years, even at some points, to have that very courageous conversation. So even coming to the conclusion that the conversation needs to happen and, you getting started I think is a big first step. But it's a really important one. It's just getting yourself there. But inviting the person to participate in the conversation and thinking about your opening statement. I think this is really important, and I think it goes back to having the positive intentions when you go into the conversation, but making sure that you're thinking thoughtfully about how you want to approach the conversation is really important. One technique I've even done in having a courageous conversation is walking with someone, so taking a walk and making sure that we both kind of ease into the conversation. One of the tips that Mel gave out too in her video was like acknowledging responsibility and saying, well, I could be a part of the problem too. So, you could invite the person to participate in so many different ways, whether it's a sit down formal meeting, by asking a question, by going for a walk. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think the intention part and how you want to invite the person in is very important. So number 3, creating the third story. So that's kind of the core of the conversation. So kind of removing yourself from the situation and looking from outside in. So I think that kind of goes back to the data, the facts, what actually happened, and replaying what happened. They always say there's three sides to the story, but considering what actually took place, it helps me to even think about what happened from their shoes, maybe what was the experience that happened with this person that I didn't consider. So that's always helpful as well. And then listening deeply, actually listening to the conversation that you're having and having some takeaways and construction for that is also really helpful. Speaking with clarity and conviction. So I think that can really help too with the preparation and the part where you're writing down your goals and making sure like, this is exactly what I want to say. No matter, what happens in that situation is always really helpful, but being very clear and concise about, this is either, how I felt or how I feel. And like, this is what I want to see is really, really important in the difficult conversations. And then solving problems collaboratively, coming up with a mutual agreement going forward, whether that's coming up with solutions or identifying problems or things that you want to avoid in the future. These 6 stages are definitely going to help you to build a better prepare you for having the difficult conversation. And next slide, please. All right, so role playing. So this gets really fun. So Brenna and I have prepared a script for you, a scenario that we're both going to read from and do some role playing around. And after that, we definitely want to hear how you all think it went. And now that, by the end of this, you're going to be expert people at having courageous conversations. We want to hear from you about some things that maybe we could have improved on or not improved on during these things. But here is the scenario. Are you feeling ready, Brenna?
I am. Keep in mind, we are going to get a little testy and emotional. And then also keep in mind the things that we told you about feedback and courageous conversations. And feel free, as you can identify what behaviors or things that we're doing, you can call out of why this might not have gone well or why it has gone well. So you can live chat through. So Mariah and I are doing the role play, and we're not going to ask you guys to do role play. So in case anyone thought that that's what we were going to do and had a little out moment, don't worry. Pressure's all on us.
All right. So in this scenario, my role is the director of an organization, and Brenna is the program director. So as the director of an organization, I'm dealing with multiple challenges. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids at home who are learning virtually during COVID-19. Every day, I'm helping my children with their school while juggling my job. I've got a lot on my plate. As a new director, I'm supervising Brenna, the program coordinator, and Brenna often turns in her work late. She interrupts me all the time to ask questions. She sends a lot of documents for review that I don't feel like I need to be reviewing. And Brenna, she's also new in her role. She just started this position in the middle of the pandemic. She's not met with me before yet in person, and we're still both getting to know each other. So Brenna doesn't fully understand her role. She's a bit unclear about her job duties and isn't getting clear directions from me. She asks a lot of questions. There's significant delay in response time, which results in Brenna turning in her work late. So Mariah and Brenna do not have regular check-ins, but today, right now in this moment, I've requested to meet with Brenna to discuss why she's dropping the ball all the time. So Brenna invited you here today to speak with me because I have a lot of concerns about your role. And I mean, just to start, your work is always late. It's really annoying, especially when there's things that I need to get done, but I can't because I don't have what I need from you. I feel like I can't rely on you ever. You interrupt me all the time with questions, especially when I'm busy. I have a lot of other important things going on. This position really isn't that hard to understand. I hired you because I thought you were competent enough to do your job, but I'm really starting to question that. And lastly, the information that you do end up sending me isn't even relevant. I don't understand how it can be this hard to follow instructions you were given.
Okay. So, excuse me. I'm doing the best that I can with what limited to non-existent information I have. I have gotten zero direction from you. I have been told that every single thing that I do has to go through you. But then it takes you forever to respond back to me. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting there waiting for a response, can't move forward on anything. People ask me questions of which I have gotten zero information back, but instead of responding to me and explaining the process to me, you respond to them directly, undermining me and my position, not teaching me anything, by the way, other than I'm not capable of answering an email. And then you leave me out of the loop. Like, I'm so confused by what it is that you want from me.
You know, Brenna, I don't even know where you're getting upset by all this. I've clearly laid out your job duties. I did that as soon as you started the job. You know, what went wrong? What is it that I don't understand?
Gee, I don't know. We might be in the middle of a pandemic, and I started in the middle of a pandemic, haven't met my team, haven't met my boss, haven't gotten any information about the organization.
Okay, but what does a pandemic have anything to do with you not knowing how to do your job?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's start with the fact that my position requires me to provide an in-person summer camp, to which I've never done that before, by the way. The lesson plans that from the person that had this job previously were left in the office, which has been closed and locked and inaccessible since the beginning of the pandemic. I was told to make the camp virtual, but you guys have yet to decide on the platform by which we will be using and what your expectations are for a virtual summer camp.
Okay, well, the pandemic wasn't even my fault, and I just need you to do your job.
Okay, well, this was a great talk. I don't think we should do this again.
I agree, you're fired. So that's the end of our conversation. And at the end of this, which we won't do right now, but it says that I abruptly end our Zoom meeting without saying goodbye. And we would love to hear from you, Olivia, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slideshow on slide number 17. We'd love for y'all to jot down on that slide 17, about what didn't go well in this situation. And if there were things that went well, I can't imagine that there would be. You can add those too, but love to hear from you on what did not go well in that scenario.
Mariah, I think somebody's calling me defensive in this. Can you believe that?
No, I can't. So defensive, dismissive, reactive.
Personal.
Is. Ooh, both parties used you never, so very accusatory.
I was emotional?
I didn't show any emotion. Different expectations of the work, explaining, personal attacks. Ooh.
Yeah.
It made things personal rather than talking about the situation.
Definitely some assumptions put in there, yeah.
No responsibility taken by the director for lack of clarity in the role. Ooh, I started with assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Did not listen to each other. No focus on solutions. No comparison was practiced for. No compassion.
Yeah, where was your compassion, Mariah?
Ooh, okay. And then the bottom right side, someone made suggestions on specific words not to use. So should not say interrupt, no time, no guidance was given.
Yeah.
Needing more focus on data. So.
This is great.
No
great
solutions.
We did a great job, Mariah, of doing a script that did not go well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of that feedback and observation. We're going to do the same scenario, except during that scenario, since I have all of these children in my life, during this scenario, my children weren't home, and I've asked them to leave so that I can focus on having a difficult conversation with Brenna, which I scheduled ahead of time. I'm still in the director role, Brenna's still the program staff. So I was nervous in this scenario about providing feedback, so I decided to write out my thoughts ahead of time, and I planned ahead on what I specifically wanted to talk about with Brenna. So, good morning, Brenna. How's your day been so far, and did you have a good weekend?
Hey, Mariah. Thanks for asking. I did. The weather was beautiful, and I got to spend some time outdoors. Feeling a little anxious today, but otherwise good. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm doing really well, and I'm so glad you got to spend some time outside. We had such beautiful weather over the weekend. I also got to spend some time outside with the family and the kids, and it was really great to do that because they've just been stir crazy and rambunctious with having to go back to school and doing that online stuff. So it was just nice to kind of get away and relax a little bit before, the work week and everything like that. But so you said you're feeling anxious. What's got you feeling anxious right now?
Oh, so the kids are still doing schoolwork from home. That must put a real damper on your work day. That must be really difficult to balance and juggle both those things.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm trying to come up with a long-term plan, but yeah, it definitely does put a strain on things, especially with the additional workload from work and just having to balance it at all. But luckily, the neighbors down the street, we've come up with a plan to kind of trade off, and I think we can see what that'll look like. And I'm going to plan to talk with them sooner rather than later, so I can try and figure that out soon. And I know that I've just been really slow to getting back to your emails. And one thing I do know about myself is that I respond really well when it comes to instant messengers. So if you want to text me, or you can even chat me on Slack or Zoom and things like that. If there's things that you need from me and you're able to identify a deadline of when you need them, I'm just so busy with everything. That's really going to help me keep things on track and make sure I'm able to respond to you in a timely manner.
Wow. Thank you so much for providing me with those avenues to contact you. Because as you've probably noticed, I have been late in meeting deadlines, and it usually is because I get delayed feedback from you. If you are okay with my texting you and IMing you, then I will happily do that, even if it's just to let you know that there's something sitting in your inbox so that we can continue moving forward. I really want to provide really great work.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally works for me. I would encourage us to have, more open communication. And I think this way definitely opens us to having more open communication. I think that's a really great idea. And it'll help us both, I think, keep each other informed as, projects are moving along and things like that. So question for you, would it be fair to say that you do have a lot of questions about your position and the tasks that you're working on?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be helpful if we scheduled weekly check-ins and we were able to talk through what you needed throughout the week to be successful? That way I can have a more clear understanding of what you need from me. And I think it'll also help you to prepare for future check-ins the following week if we're able to talk and plan it out and have that dedicated time set aside.
Yeah, that would be so great. Let's do that.
Okay. I think you have another part, Brenna.
Yeah, I was trying to move us along because we're a little late on time.
Okay. Well, that's a really great suggestion. With COVID-19 going on, I didn't even think to introduce you to the platform or to Zoom, but Shelly, our other colleague, she has really good experience with online learning, and I think that she'll be able to help you brainstorm some creative ideas.
Wow. I didn't know about Shelly's experience, so that's really great to have somebody to partner with and brainstorm with. Thank you for making that connection. I feel like this was a really helpful conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. I want us to be a successful team, especially since we're both new in our roles, and I'll be sure to follow up with you and put time on your calendar so we can check in. Is there anything else I can be helpful with?
No, this was great. Thank you so much, Mariah.
All right. So the end. Yeah, sorry we ran out of time, but actually I think it would be helpful if we just took ourselves off mute and reported back out. What are some things that you noticed in this conversation? What are some things that Brenna and I did do well based on what we've learned about having courageous conversations and candid learning?
You listened to one another and paraphrased how each other was feeling.
Anyone else?
You showed some of your own vulnerabilities by admitting that you've had trouble keeping up with emails and juggling with having the kids home and things like that. So that kind of opens that door for Brenna to, you know, be vulnerable as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked the statement, is it fair to say, you know, kind of rather than saying this is what I'm seeing, kind of checking in and saying, is it fair to say that you have a lot of questions about your job, is I think a really a great way of approaching that.
One last thought to share? Okay. Olivia, if you don't mind going to the next slide, which should be our conclusion.
Yep, just a real quick recap.
And I can kind of run through those too as y'all are talking. So really appreciate y'all, you know, hopping on and giving us that feedback too, you know, about the session. But here are just some wrap up points that Brenna and I wanted to hit home on as you prepare for your next courageous conversation and giving and receiving feedback. But always assume positive intent, make space for relationship building, which I can't stress enough. Respond with curiosity, asking those questions, right? Making it non-emotional, being open to change, preparing yourself ahead of time, outlining your key points, creating those goals. What's the outcome you want to see? Taking time to respond, think before responding. Always be polite and professional, something my mom always told me. You never know, you know, in the first scenario, I fired Brenna, but you never know if Brenna could come back one day and be my boss. So really important to really take home some of these key points. One thing just to add about the non-emotional part is your body language, how you're responding to nonverbal communication, you know, throwing your hands up or rolling your eyes or slouching. Those are all, you know, various ways in which communication does come across. And one thing I've experienced personally is that when I hear something that I don't like, I do have like a physical response. So being able to kind of check in with yourself when you do feel like you're, you know, pressure's on, just check in with yourself and taking a deep breath. So that was pretty much, you know, all we had today. There are some resources in a later slide. I'm apologize we didn't have time for questions, and look forward to hearing your feedback. And thank you for joining us.
All right, well, since everyone has access to the slides, you can have all the hyperlinks to the resources that Mariah and Brenna so nicely included, as well as their contact information is on the slides as well. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the chat before we close. If you would like to reflect upon Mariah and Brenna's Oscar-worthy performance, please do so at sketch.com. You can provide feedback for the sessions that have already happened, as well as seize the rest of the forum program for the sessions that are soon to come. And if you will be attending the Connecting the Dots Between Watershed-Wide Partnerships session tomorrow, please fill out the Google form so we know what breakout room to put you in. But with that, that is the end of the session. And I think the last thing on most folks' agendas is there's a Pennsylvania member session today at 3. If you're a Pennsylvania member, hang out there and see what the priorities are for that state. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.